Everybody, this is Perch. What are some storylines or some concepts that always seem to sound better to the writers, to the creators, than they do to the customers? I was talking with somebody about this at Emerald City, and they were going over kind of, hey, I was talking to a writer, I won't mention who, but I was talking to a writer, it was Donnie Cates, and they were saying that, hey, we're going to tackle this kind of stuff. And as he was saying that, like the people who were listening, that kind of in line during the tiny window when he was signing, they all kind of groaned because sounds like I'm beating up on Donnie here. I don't mean to. I know it was such a weird show. I can't. I'm not going to ever be able to describe this later. But Donnie at Emerald City in Seattle, it was a strange thing, and it was like a sequel because Donnie Cates had been advertised for the Puyallup comic little convention, comic festival earlier in the year, and he didn't show. He had pulled out kind of last minute, but the convention organizers didn't know that he had pulled out, or rather, sorry, they knew or they didn't communicate. I don't know. Somewhere wires got crossed, and so they basically kept promoting that Cates was going to be there right up to the event. And so a lot of people, understandably, went into the event and no Donnie Cates, and they were pissed. And I remember Donnie had said something on his Twitter, like, I pulled out of that show. Or, I mean, it wasn't Donnie's fault. It sounded like he had pulled out and then nobody updated the website, or I don't know. That's what I could gain out of it. Okay, not throwing any shade. But there were a decent amount of people who were ticked at Donnie because that's the way it works. If you go there expecting someone and they're not there, you blame the person that's missing. You don't, start to blame a snafu at the convention. So then Emerald City comes around, and Donnie is signing with the Ryan Stegman, which is a pretty hot team, right? You have the writer-artist of a event that was pretty big here. I wouldn't say a few months ago, but Christ, a year ago. Wow, how 2021 has flown, huh? How about that great, awesome year we just had? Anyway, as I mentioned, they would show up, and then some people would come and get signings, and then they would go as soon as the line worked down, they would vanish, and come back a few hours later. Like 10 people would line up, they would sign, and then they would vanish again. And Donnie seemed, again, I may be wrong about this. He seemed like he was in a bad mood. He seemed grumpy. And I heard from a couple other people that just like, man, he's in a bad mood. I don't know. It was a weird vibe at the show because I think a lot of people were wondering how much money was going to get spent. From what I could gather, the money that was spent at the convention was lower than what a lot of people were expecting. One of the clues to this, by the way, that I kind of figured out the day after the event ended on Monday, after the show had finished, was I was looking at some of the way that Reed Pop was advertising the event, and they basically advertised it as a manga anime festival. They were advertising comics too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about all of the advertising, but for a lot of the stuff, it was advertised as Anime Con, Anime Fest. And sure enough, if you did go there, it was filled up with people in, there were so many Demon Slayer outfits, people dressed up in that. And a bunch of parents with their kids, and their kids are dressed up like manga characters. It was very manga heavy. I guess that's all I'm saying. But it was marketed that way. So, but that seemed to depress at least a little bit of the money that people were hoping was going to get spent there. So there are some people irritable. So maybe that's what was going on, or maybe I've misread it entirely. But anyway, and now the story has wound around in some pretty crazy directions. So let me pull it back here. The comment, though, stuck with me a little bit of what are some things that writers, in particular writers, get excited about as story concepts that just nobody wants to read. Nobody wants. And granted, the standard disclaimer here. The writer, shouldn't just write whatever fans tell them. They should have a balance between bringing up new original stories that could ignite interest that the fan didn't know they had, and also listening to, reader feedback so that they can, properly merge the two. So you get it. I mean, you got it, right? Okay. You got that disclaimer. Sometimes I mention stuff like this, people should listen to the customers and they should do some analysis over what people are asking for. And I'll get these responses like, yo, so you think creators should just do whatever the fans want? And I'm like, no. I mean, yes, a little bit, but no. You shouldn't just, as a writer, sit there with a pen and paper and say, all right, give me your order, and then crank out a story, because this is how you get weird ass stories. This is how you get, like, what if Gambit uh, was in a relationship with Nightcrawler? I'd like to see that. It's like, no, no, no. Okay, stop. You have to be able to bring some new original ideas to the table, and you have to have a good job of reading your audience to see what kind of things they might go for. Both things have to happen together, like as a group, harmony. But I'm thinking about, so one of the things, and then I was reading this interview earlier today, and the comic writer was saying, one of the things we really want to touch on is this. We want to do a story that really leans into this trope that women are disposable, and they're often used just to promote male heroes, which is the kind of the women in refrigerators bit that Gail Simone did many years ago. And I'm reading that, I'm like, ugh, no, no, thank you. Nobody wants that. But I was reminded by the fact that this comes up a lot. I talk to a lot of creators who want to, like, oh, it'd be really fun. What if we explored, obsessive fandom? It's like, no, how about not? Well, we've all got we've had enough of obsessive fandom. There's been enough of that. You've tackled that topic plenty. What about one where there's a woman character, but she's kind of disregarded, and then she's treated casually, and then it's like, I mean, I think that I think there are topics that are certainly more interesting to writers in their head, that may be responding to something that they're dealing with. And I think the solution to that is that a lot of writers should go out more, or don't watch the shows. I can't remember now. It may have been Jeff Thorne, but I don't think so. The voice in my head doesn't sound like Jeff in this comment. But one writer I talked to made the statement that if they see a bunch of their peers, a bunch of people they write with, all recommending a show, like everybody is recommending, oh, you gotta watch The Handmaid's Tale, then they are almost guaranteed not to watch it. They're like, I would never watch that show, because I don't want to watch something that this. I don't want to watch something that this all the entire group is saying, because basically all that tells me is this themes of that book is going to make its way into comics, and I don't want to be yet another person who's influenced that. I want to watch and listen to the things that other people aren't watching and listening. I want to try and bring something different to the table, and I thought that was really smart. But that is definitely the dissenting opinion, I think, of the mainstream, that often watches and consumes the exact same things every time. And definitely there is this weird desire to want to keep picking at this scab of topics that were online controversial. I'm just convinced that the online controversial topics, like, for example, the whole women in refrigerators bit, which has been talked about, debated, and discussed to death. So has toxic obsessive fandom. That has been we've had so much of that. Those topics, I don't think you could do a good comic out of those at this point. I think it's because they've been regurgitated and used so much. I think there's nothing new there, and I think you're just it may get a creator excited about it, because it may be something they're arguing, or they want to do their take on it, but it's not interesting. It's like nobody wants to see you do your take on the Watchmen, doing the exact same things that happened in Watchmen. It's like, oh, what if we did the Watchmen, but there's a guy and he was kind of doing a conspiracy here, and then there was an all-powerful character, but it's lost its humanity, and there's another guy here who's a kind of anarchist type thing, and he's walking around trying to solve the mystery, but and then it's just, and we revealed that there was some shady stuff that happened that dealt with kind of sexism and racism in the past, these characters, and it's like, Alan Moore did it. You don't need to do it again. You can just let it go at this point. I don't know. I don't know how to tell that. I've had writers pitch me these ideas. Hey, what if we did a story about somebody who was a fan of a superhero, and then the superhero didn't behave exactly like the fan wanted him to behave. So then the fan turned toxic and started being a real nuisance to the superhero and causing him trouble because he was suddenly went from a fan to a toxic fan. I'm like, I don't know how to say, no, 50 people have done that this month. Don't do that. Just do something new. I do oh yeah, okay, you could do that. Yeah, you have a hard time separating that from some of the other stories that are kind of similar. Is the nice way of me saying, dude, what are you doing? But anyway, what are some of those stories for you? What are the things that have been just done to death? And do you think there are stories that creative teams just naturally gravitate to that just the customers couldn't care less about? What are those? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.